Okay, so since we're talking about China, so I read a couple of fascinating articles about China. So China just did a census, its 2020 census. And China has these 3 provinces in the north. I can't remember their names, and it doesn't really matter. But 3 provinces in the north. The north of the country is cold. It's cold. It's close to Siberia. It's anyway. The provinces in the north are provinces dominated by state-run enterprises. These are provinces that have seen the least amount of economic liberalization. These are provinces that have not seen the effect of markets. Provinces where socialism is still relatively strong ideologically, and where, again, state-run enterprises rule. And it's also where much of the heavy industry in China is produced. Mostly for internal purposes, less for exports. Right? I think Dalian would be part of that, yes. Now, the myth that the left in the United States and many in Asia and in Europe would like us to believe is that China is an example of a central planning success. It's an example where state-run enterprises have launched China from a poor country into a relative middle-class country. And yet, the 3 provinces in the north prove the opposite. The 3 provinces in the north have seen the least market changes. And as a consequence, these provinces are seeing massive declines in population. So between 2010 and 2020, for years, the political officials in these provinces kept saying, no real population decline, no real changes, everything's fine, everything's great here, everything's right on track. The census just came out, and I guess even in an authoritarian country like China, they can't lie all the time. And the census shows that the population in these 3 provinces has declined by 11% over the last decade. Now that's massive. We think people are leaving California or Illinois or New York. The decline in those states are nothing as compared to 11% in these 3 provinces in China. And the reason is obvious. If you're young and you're ambitious, you go south. Not only because of the weather in the South China is much better, but because of opportunities. Because of opportunities for entrepreneurship, because of opportunities in tech, because of opportunities to make money, because of opportunities to participate in a market. So even within China, what we are seeing is massive migration away from socialism and towards less socialism, more markets. So to the extent that the southern regions, the ones close to Hong Kong, are relatively free market, they're unregulated. I mean, it's still authoritarian, but it's unregulated to a large extent. Places like Guangzhou and Shenzhen, where the north is heavily controlled, heavily regulated, heavily politicized, heavily socialist. The movement is not within China from the places that are relatively free to the places that are socialist because central planning works so well. No, the movement is from the socialist areas within China to the areas that have more freedom, economic freedom. So even within China, capitalism is winning. Markets are winning. Please don't forget to like the show before you leave. We still have way fewer likes than we should have. given how many people are watching and I assume liking the show, or at least enjoying parts of it. So please like the show. Shanghai, is another example. Sorry, I get distracted. Shanghai is another example of a city where people are flocking to because of opportunities, because of markets, because it's relatively economically free. Somebody is asking, I don't know if those are Chinese characters or what characters they are, but does anyone know of objectivist resources in finding your purpose and deciding on a career path? I've done a number of shows on that, so you can find them here. I think you can also find stuff on the Ayn Rand Institute website and on Leonard Peikoff's podcast. If you go to Leonard Peikoff podcasts and put in purpose, you'll find a lot of stuff on purpose there. Now, China, right, thank you, Jeff. Yes, so one of the real big issues out in China is demographics. And one of the big issues now in the Northeast China is demographics. Because what is happening in Northeast China is not only people are moving to the south, but who is moving to the south? Well, it's young people. It's young people who are ambitious. They're moving to the south to find opportunity, and they're leaving behind them an elderly population, a population that's getting older constantly, that is producing less and less, that is incredibly inefficient, that has less and less wealth. And generally, China is going to start aging very quickly. The demographics are very bad. In spite of loosening up the one-child policy, it's still a shrinking population. There's still many restrictions on having kids, having more than one child, even though the one-child policy officially is over. There's still lots of disincentives to have more kids. And China's facing a real issue where, until now, Chinese economic growth, like all economic growth, was driven by investment. And one of the things that made economic growth possible in China is the fact that the Chinese save a lot. We in the West consume, they save. Savings is investment, ultimately leads, it's not the only fact obviously, but ultimately leads, investment leads to entrepreneurship, job creation, economic growth, more savings, more investment, more jobs, that virtuous cycle. Indeed, investment is at the heart of economic growth. Investment is essential for economic growth. It's not sufficient for economic growth. What you really need are ideas implemented in reality. What you really need is innovation. Michael asks, would I go skydiving for $100,000? No. But keep upping the number. There is a number at which I would go skydiving. 100,000, isn't it? 100,000, isn't it? It's got to be higher than that. So, part of the problem is that modern economists keep urging China to become a consumer economy and to focus on consumption. But and not on savings, and not on investment. But that's a recipe for decline. You've got an aging population that are probably going to consume anyway. But then what you really need is to somehow continue the investment so you have continued job growth, so you have continued economic growth. And the job growth doesn't have to be literally more jobs, because if you've got a shrinking population, you don't need more jobs. But improved productivity, you could do that through robots. Ragnar of the Desert, thank you. Really appreciate that. So China is getting bad economic advice. China should be focused on innovation. China should be focused on production. China should be focused on investment. China should be focused on more freedom, more innovators, more entrepreneurs, more ingenuity. Right? Instead of, oh, let's become consumers instead of producers. No, no, no. You want to continue being producers. You might want to be smarter producers. You might want to be more innovative producers. You might want to be more high-end producers. But at the end of the day, you have to produce. That's where wealth comes from. So China's going to have to solve its demographic problem, and they don't know exactly how to do it, and they're getting bad advice. Not for me. Nobody comes and asks me, nobody of influence, because nobody wants to implement what I want them to do. So nobody ever asked my advice. Not Israel, not China, not the US, not Canada. It would be fun if somebody did, and then we actually implemented. We could actually see the world changing before our eyes.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute, that man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it, and that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith?
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right, all right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people, nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it. But at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing. Whether you're looking at this, and you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share, and you can support the show at yaronbrookshow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals, and show your support for the work, for the value hopefully you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.